Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel where we talk about vinyl records. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for leaving comments, like and subscribe if you want. We do a video every week where we talk about vinyl records. This episode is all about soundtracks, film soundtracks. We're going to talk about the different kinds of film soundtracks. We'll take a look at some soundtracks from my collection, and we'll talk about reasons why you may want to think about adding a film soundtrack to your collection if you don't already have some. So the first type of soundtrack is a kind that features just one artist or one band, and they do all the songs on the soundtrack. Famous examples of this, of course, you have the Beatles, A Hard Day's Night, songs from the film A Hard Day's Night, and of course Help, also by the Beatles, from the film Help. You can include the Magical Mystery Tour on here. This is songs from the TV film, the Magical Mystery Tour. You could include Yellow Submarine on here. You could probably include Let It Be, I guess. Technically, that's a film. All soundtracks, but also just albums by the Beatles. Another example of that is Prince, Purple Rain. This is a soundtrack from the film Purple Rain, but all the songs are written and performed by Prince. Also, you have Prince's Parade album, which is, these are songs from the film Under the Cherry Moon. Great album, not a very good film, but yeah, so they're soundtracks, but also just albums by Prince. Biopics fall into this category a lot of times too, like the Bohemian Rhapsody biopic or the Rocket Man biopic about Elton John. Those soundtracks are, of course, going to feature songs by Queen, songs by Elton John, and they're basically just greatest hits albums, but technically soundtracks. Another type of soundtrack is one where all the songs are written by one person or persons, but performed by various different people. Example of that would be like Frank Zappa's 200 Motels album. It says on here it's the original motion picture soundtrack featuring the Mothers of Invention and the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, conducted by Frank Zappa. And all the songs were written by Frank Zappa, but they're performed by various members of the cast. And most in this category, what you get a lot of really is records like this that are musicals, soundtrack from a musical, the Rocky Horror Picture Show here. Of course, songs performed by Tim Curry, Susan Sarandon, Meatloaf, and various other members of the cast. And if you have like, say, the Grease soundtrack or the Sound of Music soundtrack, all soundtracks from musicals would fit into this category where the songs are usually written by the same people but performed by different members of the cast. Now, the third type of soundtrack, and maybe my favorite type, are the ones that are compilation albums, basically, where they just compile some songs together that were in the movie. And these are great. I'll show you a few examples from my collection here, like the Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof. It's a soundtrack, and here you can see the list of songs by different artists on here. And you've got like the Coasters are on here, and April March does a great song, Chick Habit, on here. This album's got a lot of good songs. Pretty much any Quentin Tarantino movie, he always has good music, I think, in his movies. So pretty much any soundtrack for any of his films is going to be great. What I like about these film soundtracks that are compilations is like it's just like a good mixtape. You get a lot of different songs, and if you can't decide what you want to listen to some night, you don't want to commit to one band or artist, throw on a soundtrack. It's like having a great mixtape. Or maybe you're having a party, you're gonna have random mix of people over, and they all have different musical taste. You don't want to throw on just one thing. You throw on one of these soundtracks, and it's like I said, it's like a great mixtape. Wes Anderson is another director who always has good music in his films. This is the soundtrack to the Rushmore film. I mean, you've got the Kinks, the Who, Cat Stevens, John Lennon, the Faces, and then also on here is some original pieces of music by Mark Mothersbaugh, who I think, I could be wrong, but I think he's the musical director on all of the Wes Anderson films. He makes great movies, and he always has killer music. Any Wes Anderson film, I think the soundtrack would be worth having. Another soundtrack that I listen to a lot. I listened to these last two examples. I listen to them a lot. This is from the movie Don't Worry, Darling. Love this soundtrack. It's got a lot of 50s and 60s doo-wop music, I guess. I mean, you can see the list there. Ray Charles, Dizzy Gillespie, Ella Fitzgerald, Mel Torme, The Platters. You got songs like Oogum Boogum, Shaboom, Tears on My Pillow. Great classic songs from the 50s and 60s. I spin this record quite a bit. It never gets old. And finally, another soundtrack I really like a lot is from Scott Pilgrim versus the World. This is a awesome soundtrack. I believe it's on green vinyl. Yeah. You got Frank Black, Beck, T-Rex does Teenage Dream on here. But what's great about this is even the bands that you haven't heard of probably all have great songs on here. I mean, it's just nothing but great songs on this soundtrack, and I listen to this album a lot. So anyway, there you have it. Different types of soundtracks that you may want to think about adding to your collection. Let me know in the comments what's a good soundtrack that you own, or a good soundtrack that you would like to have. Let me know. I'm always on the lookout for some good soundtracks to add to the collection. That's it for this episode, and we'll see you next week.